There's something psychologically interesting about people who have very few friends, or sometimes none at all. From the outside, it can look simple. Maybe they're antisocial. Maybe they're arrogant. Maybe they just don't know how to connect. But human behavior is rarely that simple. Some people have no friends because they push everyone away. Others have no friends because they've become extremely selective about who they allow close. Some are socially anxious. Some have been hurt repeatedly, and some genuinely enjoy their own company. So the absence of friendship doesn't automatically tell you what kind of person someone is. What matters is the pattern underneath it. Because when a person consistently lives without close friendships, certain personality traits and psychological tendencies can sometimes appear not as universal rules, but as recurring patterns worth understanding. And the first one is probably the most misunderstood. The first trait is unusually high independence. Some people become so comfortable relying on themselves that needing other people starts to feel uncomfortable. They make their own decisions, solve their own problems, spend time alone, and rarely ask for help. If something goes wrong, their instinct is not to call a friend. It's to figure it out privately. At first, this can look like confidence, and sometimes it is. But there's an important psychological difference between being independent and being unable to depend on anyone. Healthy independence says, I can handle this myself, but I'm also comfortable accepting support. Extreme independence can sound more like, I don't need anybody. That difference matters. Imagine someone having a terrible week at work. Their closest colleague notices something is wrong and says, you can talk to me if you want. They smile and say, I'm fine. Maybe they really are. But sometimes I'm fine is not confidence. It's a learned form of emotional self-protection. Over time, a person may become so accustomed to handling everything alone that vulnerability begins to feel like weakness. And when vulnerability feels dangerous, intimacy becomes difficult. That leads to another trait. These people can be highly selective about who they trust. They may not dislike people at all. In fact, some of them enjoy conversations, understand social situations well, and can be perfectly pleasant around others. But friendship requires something deeper than being pleasant. It requires trust. And trust means allowing someone to see parts of you that you normally keep hidden. A highly selective person may watch people carefully. Before becoming emotionally close, they notice inconsistencies. They remember how someone talks about other people. They notice whether a person keeps promises. They pay attention to how someone behaves when they're angry, disappointed, jealous, or under pressure. This can create a very small social circle because their standard for emotional closeness is much higher than simply, we get along. But there's a hidden danger here. Being selective can protect you from unhealthy relationships. Being excessively suspicious can prevent healthy ones. If you expect everyone to eventually disappoint you, you may interpret ordinary human imperfections as evidence that someone cannot be trusted. A friend cancels plans once, and you think they don't care. Someone forgets something you told them, and you assume they're selfish. Someone disagrees with you, and you interpret it as disrespect. This is where self-protection can quietly become isolation. And sometimes the person doesn't realize they're participating in their own loneliness. The third trait is strong self-awareness, but sometimes with a tendency toward overthinking. People who spend a lot of time alone often spend a lot of time inside their own minds. They analyze conversations. They replay awkward moments. They think about why someone reacted a certain way. They question their own decisions. They may notice emotional patterns that other people simply move past. This can develop metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. That can be incredibly valuable. But self-awareness and rumination are not the same thing. Self-awareness asks, what can I learn from what happened? Rumination keeps asking, why did this happen? Without reaching a useful conclusion. Imagine someone having a strange conversation with a coworker. The conversation lasts 5 minutes, but later that night they replay it 20 times. Why did they say that? Did I sound stupid? Was there something behind that comment? Maybe they don't actually like me. The mind is trying to solve uncertainty. But sometimes there is nothing to solve. The more someone analyzes social interactions without enough information, the easier it becomes to create a story that feels true simply because they have repeated it so many times. That can make social connection exhausting. And if every interaction becomes something to analyze, being alone can start feeling much safer. The fourth trait is a strong preference for emotional control. Some people are uncomfortable with emotional unpredictability. Not only their own emotions, but other people's emotions too. Friendships naturally involve inconvenience. Someone needs reassurance. Someone gets upset. Someone misunderstands you. Someone expects you to show up when you would rather be alone. Someone tells you something painful, and suddenly you're carrying part of their emotional world. For a person who highly values control and emotional stability, this can feel overwhelming. Solitude is predictable. Relationships are not. When you're alone, nobody suddenly changes the plan. Nobody misreads your message. Nobody demands an explanation. Nobody disappoints you. That predictability can become psychologically rewarding. And this is where reinforcement can quietly shape behavior. If avoiding people reduces anxiety, discomfort, conflict, or emotional uncertainty, the brain learns that avoidance works. You stay home, you feel relief. Next time, staying home becomes easier. Eventually, the person may not even think of it as avoidance anymore. They simply say, "I prefer being alone." And perhaps they genuinely do. But sometimes preference and adaptation become difficult to separate. The fifth trait is perhaps the deepest one, a complicated relationship with belonging. A person without close friends may genuinely believe they don't need connection. But human beings are still social creatures. That doesn't mean everyone needs a huge friend group. Some people thrive with one close friend, others prefer family relationships, romantic relationships, communities, or occasional social contact. The issue isn't the number of people around you. It's whether you have meaningful connection somewhere in your life. Because there is a difference between solitude and emotional isolation. Solitude can feel peaceful. Isolation often feels like nobody would understand you, even if you tried to explain yourself. And sometimes people who appear completely comfortable alone secretly carry a painful belief. If people really knew me, they wouldn't stay. That belief can come from rejection, betrayal, criticism, social experiences, or simply years of feeling different from the people around them. Eventually, the person stops trying. Not because they stopped wanting connection, but because wanting connection became associated with disappointment. And that creates a strange psychological contradiction. They may crave closeness while simultaneously protecting themselves from it. They may want someone to understand them while making themselves difficult to understand. They may complain that nobody reaches out while rarely reaching out themselves. They may want deeper friendships while rejecting people before those friendships have enough time to develop. This is why having no friends should never automatically be treated as a personality defect. Sometimes it reflects healthy independence. Sometimes it reflects social anxiety. Sometimes it reflects painful experiences. Sometimes it reflects unrealistic expectations. And sometimes it simply reflects a person's lifestyle and temperament. The important question isn't, why doesn't this person have friends? The more interesting question is, what happens inside them when someone tries to get close? Do they become defensive, suspicious, overly analytical, emotionally distant? Or do they simply feel peaceful and fulfilled without a large social life? Those answers tell you far more than the number of contacts in their phone. And maybe there's something worth asking yourself here too. When you say you enjoy being alone, is that genuinely what you want? Or has being alone become easier than risking disappointment? Because there is nothing wrong with solitude. Sometimes being alone is where people finally hear their own thoughts clearly. But if solitude becomes a fortress rather than a choice, something changes. A fortress can keep bad people out. It can also keep good people out. And perhaps the healthiest form of independence isn't becoming someone who needs nobody. It's becoming someone who can stand alone without being afraid to let the right people stand beside them.